Hello and good morning everyone, and thank you for joining our Intel Security webinar today. So we're joined here by John Burke from Intel Security, who will be going through the webinar with you. And we also have Luke Kiernan here from Bytes Software Services, who will just briefly be discussing the relationship between Bytes and Intel Security.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining our webinar today. Before I pass over to John, I just wanted to quickly set the scene and maybe get you to think about this comment we are seeing a lot of today. As you all know, the cyber threats are increasing at an alarming rate, and as an IT infrastructure becomes more complex, it's inevitable that something will get through. I mean, as the comment suggests, we really need to change our mindset to move from if an attack is going to happen to when and how. I mean, the reason we need to do this is so we can reduce the time it takes to locate and remediate an attack. John will probably go into this in further detail, but a SIEM integrated with your other security solutions will assist you to take action on resolving these threats in real time. So with that in mind, I'll pass over to John, and we can catch up at the end for Q&A.
Okay, thanks, Luke. I presume everybody can hear me okay? So good morning. My name is John Burke. I'm a security engineer here for Intel Security, covering the UK and Ireland. And one of the technologies that I cover is the McAfee SIEM Solution, Enterprise Security Manager, along with different technologies like network IPS, endpoint. So I cover quite a range of our different solutions. So I'm here to speak to you this morning, around our ESM solution. But before I begin that, I'd like to I suppose, speak to again what Luke already spoke about. And what we see is the current ThreatScape capabilities. So, I mean, you know, you've invested and customers have invested in security capabilities, security controls, you know, aligned against certain threats and risks. But obviously, things are still getting in. So how do we? So this is what we see. So it seems to be easier to be compromised. So for example, you see things like ransomware, which is a daily occurrence. We also see that there's more threats. So the volume of threats has increased substantially. And if you look at things like the McAfee Labs quarterly reports or the Verizon data breach reports, you see the volume of threats in the wild is continually increasing from quarter to quarter. So this is leading to how we describe here as overwhelmed security teams. So your security team could be 10 security analysts. Maybe it's just an IT manager who has been given the security hat. So the time to compromise has shortened. The time to discover has lengthened, and you can see here it being measured in months and years. And then critically, the time to recover also being measured in months and weeks. So this can all lead to, so a catastrophic impact isn't being too dramatic. So loss of data, even things like loss of reputation, and the kind of damage that can do to a business. So I suppose where we need to get to, and where we're trying to get our customers to, is to lengthen the time to compromise. So make it a significant effort, an adversarial effort for a hacker to compromise an organization, and trying to make it as difficult as possible so that they may just move on to the next target. Optimizing your security teams, and really the business outcome is shortening the time to discover down to hours, and the time to recover, the time to remediate. So maybe you've done your forensic investigation, you know that these certain amounts of systems, for example, are compromised. So how do you recover them, and how do you do it in an automated fashion? So at Intel Security, we talk about an integrated platform, or we also talk about the threat defense lifecycle. And the three stages of this threat defense lifecycle are here in the circles in the middle. So the protect, detect, and correct. So the McAfee SIEM solution plays mainly in detection and correction. So with protection, you're talking about your typical security controls. So things like endpoint security, network security. You can see here there's the McAfee Web Gateway, but there's also there's a lot more as well. So they're doing your typical protection. On the right-hand side here, as you look at the screen, you're looking at detection, and this is where the Enterprise Security Manager, the SIEM, comes in. So if you think you've been breached, or you're looking for these low and slow attacks, so these stealthy kind of attacks, this is where the McAfee, where the SIEM comes in. So looking at the log sources, applying intelligence, applying analytics to that, looking at deviations from the norm, and then this allows you to do a correction. So a correction typically is remediation. So there are tools here like McAfee Active Response, which will allow you to go and hunt malware and contain it or delete it, and to also fix the damage that's been done. And again, the SIEM is another component of this correction phase. So for example, feeding indicators of compromise from maybe a URL, or maybe automated from a sandboxing solution, or just manually importing an IOC into the SIEM, just to see where else potentially have you been breached. So bringing it all into an integrated platform, again, making life easier, and critically shortening the window of discovery and remediation. So moving on to I suppose SIEM 101. What is SIEM? So SIEM, it's not new, I guess, is the first thing. It's the evolution and integration of two distinct technologies. So event management and information management, and combining these together. And then what you should have with a SIEM solution is the capability to obviously data collection. So taking your logs from your firewalls, from your endpoints, from your Active Directory servers, your router switches, whatever it may be. You then maybe aggregate those logs together. You would perform normalization on the logs, so categorizing the logs, pulling out the relevant data, so IP address, source IP address, destination, timestamp, that kind of information, and categorizing it properly. You would apply analytics or intelligence like correlation to those raw logs. So if X has happened over time period Y, then that may trigger an event. So for example, a simple use case is things like brute force attacks. So if there's been 19 unsuccessful login attempts to your Active Directory server, or whatever it may be, and the 20th one is successful, and that all happens within 5 minutes, then that's an indication of a successful brute force attack. So applying correlation logic to the raw logs. Then some other capabilities around retention. So you need to maybe retain those logs for forensic purposes, for investigation, for compliance purposes. And critically, again, analysis and workflow. So having all of these logs collected is all very well and very nice, and maybe for compliance purposes, but trying to make sense of them so that a human pair of eyes can sit in front of a console at a minimum and be able to see a prioritized list of events, of security events, where hopefully that you could take automated action, or there would be an automated action, but if not, that you can actually drill down from a high-level security incident or event and do some forensic investigation. So the three major factors that we see here, and I suppose that the market sees around the majority of SIEM implementations. The first one is real-time threat visibility, and I suppose security, operation efficiency, the second one, they're kind of linked. So trying to improve your security posture effectively and do it most efficiently. And then the third driver for SIEM implementations are around compliance or log management purposes. So the McAfee ESM, so the challenge it's trying to address is to find and resolve those hidden threats early. So again, minimizing that window of impact. And it does this through threat detection, so through continuous monitoring, prioritized threat awareness, and actionable intelligence. And it's allowing it to do threat detection and incident response as well. How it does this is in three areas effectively. So analytics, intelligent analytics, and I'll go through these areas in a moment. Actionable information, so having these raw logs, having them correlated, so parsed out the relevant information, correlated, and again making this information actionable so that you can go to a dashboard. As I said, there's a high severity event, you can drill down, you can see what's causing it, what correlation rule has been triggered, and then begin to take an action, all in a couple of clicks from a customizable dashboard. And then the McAfee ESM, so the adaptability, so making it flexible and scalable. So various deployment options. So, physical appliances, virtual appliances, deploying this in the cloud on Amazon, for example, and operational simplicity. So easy to use out of the box that you can begin to see value nearly immediately. That you don't need to wait 6 to 7 months before you see value from your from your SIEM solution. So the challenge, and this is just a Ponemon cost of cyber crime study that was done, looking at I suppose the cost of not being able to detect and remediate threats before they impact the business. So it's saying here the average time to resolution 32 days, and I know in the survey or the study before this that was 24 days, so that has risen, and the average cost per day that it's looking at incidents is $32,000. Again, that has risen from, I think, about $24,000. So again, these are the kind of the problems that the SIEM solution is trying to fix and trying to help with. So how secure is your organization? And there's a couple of questions here that maybe you need to ask yourself, I guess. And so for example, what's going on? So can you see who's using your infrastructure? Do you have visibility? Do you understand what is normal use and what isn't? So is there deviations from the norm? So you need to answer these kind of questions and investigate in real time to deliver us effective threat detection. Then the second question is, how important is it? So understanding how a threat can impact your infrastructure, that's crucial for prioritizing incidents and trying to align the right information with the right people for investigation. So preventing your team or your teams from chasing after false positives. So trying to eliminate the noise and get out from the weeds, I suppose. And then where should you focus? So with the intelligence gained from all your log sources, will your SIEM solution allow your team to investigate whatever they see on the security dashboard, or do they need to close down one area of the solution, open another, and reload? So again, critically wasting time, or is it, as it says here, it's smart, fast, and able to automate, which is the ideal world where we see a threat within our organization that's maybe triggered a correlation route, and that you can automate a response to that. So as opposed to just maybe, and a response may be just an email or a page or a text or whatever, but you may want to, what you want to do is have your SIEM integrated with your existing security controls. So that, for example, with your endpoint solution, that you can maybe, tag a system to be quarantined. With your network IPS solution, you can blacklist an IP address, and that this is all automated without having to go to those other security controls and perform that action. So again, security data, as it says there, holds many answers, but it's only if you can quickly look at this data, make sense of it, and focus your resources that it's going to be of benefit. So the McAfee SIEM solution, the Intel Security SIEM solution, which is McAfee Enterprise Security Manager, the three areas that I'm going to speak to, the first one is around intelligence. So I suppose a smart SIEM, it helps you find what's important to your organization, allowing you to spend more time on what's critical and less time, I guess, on what's not. The second area is around actionable. So again, ease of use, for example, so out of the box getting value from it, so active and customizable dashboards, making investigation easy. And again, of course, it needs to be high performance. So this is a challenge always with SIEM products. Performance. So you're throwing all these logs at an appliance and can it handle it? So with the McAfee solution, there's a proprietary database at the back end called the embedded database, and it started life in the utilities industries in the United States. So it started life in nuclear power plants. So where it needed to handle a large volume of data quickly and to be able to correlate, for example, and come out with a result. So that's the back end, and that's where we get our high performance data management engine from. And this is something that, for example, organizations like Gartner continually, I suppose, call us out for when they're doing their reports, is around the fact that we can handle these high events per second, and that the system doesn't become bogged down and slow down. So that's the idea of actionable, and then integrated. So as I spoke about earlier, the threat defense lifecycle and an integrated platform. So your SIEM isn't just another console. Your SIEM should really be the center point of your security operations, regardless of how big or small that is. And it's taking feeds from various data sources, but also it's allowing you to, as it says here, enable efficient and effective response. So getting to the, I suppose, the ideal world where you have an automated response, and that response is being performed because of the intelligence that's been derived from your SIEM. So real-time advanced analytics. I mean, what do we mean by that when we talk about it in the SIEM solution? So the growth of digital business information, the fact that there's always on business activity, so that's driving a high volume of data and of security data that needs to be collected and analyzed, and the intelligence needed from all this data, so that's critical to quickly identify and resolve threats. So how do we do that? So the McAfee SIEM solution, it calculates baseline activity for all collected information in real time, and it's alerting of potential threats before they occur and analyzing that data for patterns of early breach detection. So these low and slow attacks that are stealthy, that are hidden, they may happen over weeks, over months. So how do you pick those up? And that's looking at, this is how we do this with this baseline activity. So looking at deviations from the norm. Then there's rule-based and risk-based correlation. So with rule-based correlation, so that scenario of the brute force attack where X number of events have happened over a certain time period, that's an example of a rule-based correlation rule. But there's also rule-less correlation, so more statistical-based, and we call it actually risk-based correlation. So again, it's helping you detect known and unknown threats. So the third point here, applying context to these logs. And context may be local intelligence within your organization. So for example, is it a high critical asset that is maybe communicating with a Tor exit node? So again, that's local context. But that context can come globally as well from external sources. So with McAfee Labs, you've got something called global threat intelligence, which is in effect a threat feed. So it'll be dynamically updating the SIEM with things like Tor exit nodes, a watch list, and we use the idea of watch list in the SIEM. So a watch list is a list of objects. So an object may be an IP address, a list of users, a list of servers, and it can be dynamic and static watch lists. You can create your own watch list, a static watch list of your critical assets. You can also create a dynamic watch list that will continually update. And the McAfee Labs, for example, will feed dynamic watch lists into the SIEM solution, and also provide correlation rules. So that's giving greater context to see who you're communicating with and who shouldn't you be communicating with. And then obviously the whole idea of proactive risk and threat detection within the same console. So you're not moving between different consoles. If there is a breach, if there is a security incident that you need to investigate, you can do it all from the central console. Then the second point under intelligence is threat prioritization. So having a centralized threat dashboard, which is in the McAfee SIEM, that provides continuous monitoring and real-time threat awareness. So it's giving you timely access to the information required for investigation and remediation. You also then have automated alerts and workflow. So again, if there's a high severity security incident in the SIEM, you can create an alert, create an alarm, assign that, for example, to somebody within your IT team. Maybe it integrates with a ticketing system, for example, so Remedy. You could open a ticket in Remedy automatically that can be assigned. And then when we're dealing with threats, so correlating event information against threat feeds. So correlating both McAfee and third-party threat feeds as well. So that threat feed from McAfee Labs, we can also take third-party threat feeds as well. So if you have a threat feed maybe that is specific to your industry, you can feed that into the McAfee SIEM to allow you to prioritize the threats and get greater context around what's important to you. When it comes to the second item, actionable, the first point here is around active and customizable dashboards. So with our solution, you can investigate everything you view on the dashboard and access current and historical data. So, you know, if you want to do an ad hoc investigation or a forensic investigation, you can do that from the dashboard. The SIEM solution also, it streamlines security operations, you know, by giving you a centralized view, and you're getting the, you know, access to your endpoint data, to your network. You're also, as I said, getting, you know, threat data, reputation feeds, vulnerability status, for example. So if you've got a vulnerability scanner, so for example, with the latest version of McAfee SIEM 9.5, McAfee SIEM, there's something there called the Threat Risk Manager. So if you have a vulnerability scanner doing scans, you can apply that information to the latest threat feeds from McAfee, and also then you can import your assets from Active Directory. So you know you have your critical assets, you have the vulnerability scan information, and then you have the latest threat information. So it allows you to assign, and it'll do this automatically, a risk score. So you can see that, you know, your DNS server hasn't been patched, and so it's susceptible to a certain vulnerability. But also with the threat feed from McAfee, if you've got certain McAfee products deployed, it'll tell you that, you know, that countermeasure is deployed, so the system isn't, the risk score is lessened. So for example, if you have the McAfee endpoint solution or McAfee host IPS deployed, and that's providing coverage against a certain Windows vulnerability that you haven't got patched yet, the risk score on that machine will be lower. So again, it's allowing you to make a decision on what systems I need to patch immediately. So the idea of a risk advisor. And that's again all from this central dashboard. So high performance, and this is something I spoke about around our proprietary database, the embedded database. So it allows us to collect massive amounts of data quickly, to do data enrichment on that data in real time. And again, it's allowing us to do online reporting, analytics on current and historic data. So I mean, this solution has been designed to share and analyze massive amounts of data, and we're able to do this with the high performance data engine. That is the back end. And this is not a database that, you know, requires any database skills. It's a self-managing database, a self-fixing database. So really, apart from maybe running some maintenance tasks, which will be automated within the UI, you can just kind of, once you set it up, you just really forget about it. The third point when it comes to ease of operation is around usability. So trying to get value out of the box, and how we do this are things like, you know, pre-built dashboards, you know, pre-built correlation rules. I mean, we support out of the box over 400 different data sources. So, you know, everything from your Cisco firewall, your checkpoint firewall, your McAfee endpoint, your semantic endpoint, whatever it may be. So we support all of the major commercial security products. And again, you can get very quickly, you just add a data source within the ESM UI, and you will see dashboards begin to populate. You may even see things like correlation rules begin to trigger if there's something happening. So the time to value is reduced, and making it, you know, as it says here, easy for investigation and reporting. Obviously, just pre-built reports as well that are there. So very quickly get up and running and begin to see value. There's different deployment options as well. So physical appliances, and I'll go through the different components in a moment. Physical compliance, virtual compliance, so whatever really fits your organization. So compliance, as I said at the start, is a big driver for SIEM projects. And out of the box, again, we cover this unified compliance framework standards, these standards, so things like PCI, ISO. So you will have pre-built dashboards, pre-built reporting. You don't need to create these yourself. So if you do need to prove compliance, you add your data sources, whatever data sources are needed, and again, you will see these dashboards, see these reports being populated, and that's out of the box. So there's no heavy lifting to do there. And the third area of the SIEM is around integration and integrated security. So, I mean, we're collecting this data from, 400 different, potentially over 400 different data sources. I mean, we can also add custom sources as well if needs be. And where we want to get to is this automated, well, it says here, first response. So if there is a security incident, you want to have an outcome where that there's an action taken. A simple action may be obviously just send an email to somebody. But depending on the security controls that you have applied, if they're McAfee endpoint, for example, you can quarantine a system. If it's the IPS, you can blacklist. But if there's obviously third-party security products you've deployed, you can run scripts. So with our threat defense lifecycle, we have something that we call the data exchange layer, which is the communication fabric that we use that allows us to share threat information between our different security controls. So your McAfee web gateway sees something malicious, it in real time shares that threat information with the McAfee endpoint, for example, a simple use case. But that is an open framework. So other security vendors are plugging into that and DXL enabling their products. So for example, I think Checkpoint last week announced that they are going to partake in the DXL. So your Checkpoint firewall can share threat information with your McAfee endpoint. And there's a number of different security vendors now taking part in that data exchange layer. So it's not just McAfee security controls when we talk about integrated security. It's also third party. And again, we talk about integrated, we're talking about closed loop incident workflow. So, when you discover an incident, how do you contain it, and then how do you remediate it? So, I mean, we do have solutions here, the McAfee Threat Intelligence Exchange, TIE, which is a service that runs on this data exchange there, this DXL, which is giving you reputation information. So looking at, the unknown files, for example, in your organization and the reputation of it. So being able to handle known good or known bad is pretty straightforward, but what about the stuff in between? So, unknown. So with Threat Intelligence Exchange, every time an executable is run on an endpoint, for example, it'll do a reputation check of this file within the organization. So that's a centralized database. And basically it'll look at, have we seen this file before? How prevalent it is in the organization? If it's the first time it's been run, and for example, if it's not signed with a known certificate, well then there's a likely chance there that there may be malware. So then you can set policy on 5 different levels of reputation, so everything from known good to known bad and in between. And again, that's happening over the DXL, that data exchanger. So this is happening in real time. And again, we're instantly sharing this threat information across the organization, and the SIEM being part of this. So the SIEM is on the DXL as well, and getting this threat information, allowing it to make a greater decision, giving it more context when it's running correlation, for example, when it's doing analytics. So the solution itself, so it can be delivered in a number of ways. It can be physical or virtual appliances. There can be what we call combination appliances, so more than one component together. So there's an integrated SIEM and log management, for example. So the Enterprise Security Manager, this is I suppose the brains of the solution, and everything happens there really. This is where you log in. This is where you add the other components. So you would need a receiver, for example, and in the next slide I'll go through the components in more detail. You can have a dedicated correlation engine. If, for example, you want to look at applications and the kind of content on your network, so you can install something, or there's a component called the Application Data Monitor, which will tie in back up to the McAfee Enterprise Security Manager. There is the Database Event Monitor for looking at network-based database transactions. And then, the integration operational efficiency down the end. So integrating with things like EPO. So if you're an endpoint user, there's integration with the SIEM and EPO. This TIE DXL, this Threat Intelligence Exchange, reputation servers running on this data exchange there. There's integration there. There's integration with our Network Security Manager, IPS, with GTI, obviously getting the threat feeds from McAfee Labs, with our Vulnerability Manager, with our sandboxing solution, Advanced Threat Defense. So a new feature allows us, in 9.5, which is the latest version, allows us now to take and automatically feed IOCs, indicators of compromise, from our sandboxing solution, ATD, into the SIEM. and then it can perform what we call a backtrace analysis of that IOC. And then again, there is integration with our SIA partners, so our Security Innovation Alliance partners that we do integrate with. So it's not just this ecosystem that has been created is open, so it's not just closed, obviously, to McAfee or to Intel Security products. So the solution components. So there are two required components for any McAfee ESM project. The first one is a receiver, and that's basically taking the logs from your data sources, so your firewalls, your endpoints, whatever it may be. They're sending their logs, and again, it depends on the format. It could be syslog, could be WMI. There's a number of different formats that we support. So let's send those logs to the receiver. And on a receiver then, receiver will run parsing rules, so normalize out the data, so categorize it. So take the raw log, parse out what's relevant, and categorize it. It may do aggregation, so adding logs together. You can do correlation on a receiver, so you can run rule-based correlation on a receiver. And then it will send those logs, those normalized logs, onto the ESM, to the central console, the Enterprise Security Manager. So this is where, as it says here, it all happens here. So all of the administration, all of the dashboards, all of the investigation, the forensic investigation, all of the reports, it all happens on the ESM. So this is the only place really that you're logging on. So you would add the different components within the ESM. So you may add a receiver or a number of receivers to do the log collection. You would do that within the ESM. So those two components are required. Then highly recommended, so for the ELM, for raw log management. So if you, for example, if you have compliance needs or for forensic needs, you want to keep a copy of the raw log, you would need an ELM. So all of these components that I'm going to speak about all come as physical or virtual appliances. The physical appliances will have storage on them. So if you want to store those logs on a physical ELM, you can do that. Or if you want to offload that to a SAN, for example, you can do that as well. Another highly recommended component is a advanced event correlation appliance, an ACE. So this is a dedicated appliance to correlation. So I said earlier that you can do correlation on a receiver, which you can. There would be a performance hit on the receiver if you turn on correlation, because correlation can be resource intensive. So look, it's going to begin to use RAM. So for performance purposes, depending, and this all depends really on your organization, the kind of events per second that you generate. You may want to go with a dedicated ACE for correlation. So the correlation on an ACE, on an advanced event correlation appliance, is rule-based and risk-based. So that kind of statistical-based correlation as well is available on an ACE. And it'll also allow you to do historical correlation. So for example, if you see something, if you created a correlation rule, or maybe a new correlation rule has come from ourselves, and that's triggered something in your organization, and if you want to go back over historical logs to see, was this an issue 6 months ago, you can place an ACE in what we call historical mode and run your historical logs through it from your ELM and run that new correlation rule there. So it's real-time and historical correlation. Then GTI, the threat feed from McAfee Labs, Global Threat Intelligence. Again, highly recommended. That's giving you context around the kind of the global, known bad actors, I guess, from McAfee Labs. So looking at global reputation of IP addresses, of URLs, of files, that kind of information. Again, just providing more context into the ESM to allow make a decision. And then there's some other options. So application data monitor, again, is another component that can be, another appliance that can be added. It's looking at application layer visibility, and there's an element of content inspection there as well. So the kind of files that are in your network and that are being created by applications. There is the database event monitor. So looking at database transactions at a network level. So network transactions in your database. And then there is storage. So if you exhaust the storage on the appliances, you can add directly attached storage. You can purchase that from Intel Security. So if you've got high event rates and log retention periods, for example, you can also, as I said, offload those logs to a SAN if necessary. So you don't need to go down the directly attached storage route. This is a typical basic architecture. So starting on the right-hand side here, you can see here you have a number of receivers. So they're taking the logs from your data sources and then on the receivers, you've got, as I said, normalization happening, maybe correlation, maybe aggregation of raw events into one. So that's happening on the receiver. On the receiver as well, and if you have an LM for log management, excuse me, you can choose when you add a data source to the receiver that a copy of the raw log gets sent to the LM for retention purposes. And that LM is actually searchable from the Enterprise Security Manager, the ESM. So you can actually search those raw logs from the ESM. As you can see here as well, we've offloaded, in this case, some of the storage from the LM to a SAN using iSCSI or whatever it may be. Then you have the ESM itself, again, so the brains of the operation. So these logs have been normalized. They then get sent to the ESM. So this is where you would log in. And then off the ESM, you may have a dedicated correlation engine for performance, or maybe through risk-based correlation if you want to take advantage of that capability. And also then you have the application data monitor, so content visibility, looking at the kind of files in the organization on the network. So that's just a kind of a very simple, typical, basic architecture. All of these appliances, so there would be a number of different appliances within each component. So there would be a number of ESMs, a number of ESM models, there'll be a number of receiver models, LM models, etc. They're all sized by events per second. So I mean, if you want to go down the route of a McAfee SIEM project, the first thing we would do is a sizing exercise, and there's a sizing tool that we can provide to do that, which is very easy to use, and we can get an estimate of your events per second requirements before we architect out a solution. The latest version of Enterprise Security Manager is 9.5. So this is some of the latest and it was released last year. So some of the latest innovations, I guess. The first one here is around cyber threat management. So there's a cyber threat management dashboard, and this is taking, I suppose, things like IOCs, for example. You can see here via sticks, so if they're in the sticks form or taxi, we support that. If there's an IOC from our McAfee Advanced Threat Defense, so an IOC is an indicator of compromise. So an indicator of compromise may be, a bad IP address, or it could be as simple as that, or for example, it could be a lot more complicated than that, a lot more advanced than that. So you can feed that IOC in the sticks format into the ESM, and that would populate a cyber threat management dashboard. There's also third-party web URLs there as well. So these are automated feeds. You can also manually import an IOC. And then the next feature here, Backtrace, builds on that. So if you've got an IOC, you've fed it into the ESM. You can do what we call a backtrace. So you can go back. You can run that IOC through your logs, looking for that. So if for example, very simply, if it was a known IP address and you want to see, does this IP address appear elsewhere, or does it appear? So if there's a known attack out there, a known vulnerability, and you've got the indicators of compromise, maybe from a KB article or whatever it may be, you have them in sticks format, you import them very simply, and then run backtrace. So, have I seen this IP address somewhere in my organization? And you can go back over the last 60 days and run that IOC, do a backtrace of that IOC. So again, that's cyber threat management and backtrace are new features within 9.5. Content packs, again, which are a feature brought into ESM, and this is the idea of actionable or usability. So a content pack are kind of a typical use case that we see from customers. So at the moment there's about 12 of them, and so you can see there's typical ones here. So email content, data leakage, insider threat. So you may have a use case that you want to start with network security or firewall security when you set up your SIEM. But where do I start? What do I need? Well, obviously you need to add your firewall data sources. But what correlation rules do I need? Do I need to create my own correlation rule? What reporting do I need? What dashboards do I need? So these content packs are downloadable within the ESM, and they will be downloaded typically with a rules update. So there's various rules that get updated. So maybe new correlation rules, new parsing rules. And these content packs, if you select them, it's just a tick box. It'll download the content pack, and it's a ready-to-go use case. So There'll be a KB article associated with each of these 12 content packs. It'll tell you, what you need to do, what data sources you need to add, and then the rest of it is done for you. So if you add your checkpoint firewall, for example, and you've downloaded the firewall content pack, you will see new dashboards appear in the ESM. You will see new correlation rules. If there's applicable, it will have been downloaded and entered into the database. You'll see new reports. So if you want to do reporting around your firewalls, that will all be done. So no need for you to create any of these. So the idea of, again, getting value from the ESM out of the box. That's what these content packs are about. And as I said, there's 12 here at the moment. These will continue to be added to as we see, more typical, more common use cases from customers. The Risk Advisor dashboard. So this is the feature I spoke about that allowing you to, do a risk score to your assets. So taking your vulnerability management feed, your information from your vulnerability scanner, you import that into the ESM. You import your assets from Active Directory, for example, and you can assign a criticality score. So you may want to give your servers a higher criticality score than maybe just your standard user laptops. And then the third element is the threat risks, threat risk information. So giving you the latest threat risk, which comes from McAfee. Again, that will be pulled down in a rules update, much like the content packs. And you put the three of those together, and it gives you a risk score. And again, in a dashboard, so you can very quickly see, okay, this system is a high risk score because it doesn't have a valid countermeasure deployed, and it's missing this patch. So I need to patch that system today. This system here, the risk score is less because, for example, it has McAfee host IPS, and there's an element of virtual patching there. So I can that's not a priority, I guess, to patch. So advising you on the risk within the organization. And then the idea of integration. So as I said, this data exchange layer, the DXL. So now we can get IOCs directly from our advanced threat defense, our sandbox solution. So if it sees something malicious, we can feed. If it does dynamic analysis or static analysis of a file in the sandbox, you can send that IOC to the SIEM to maybe run a backtrace on it, and that's all been done over the data exchange layer in real time. And again, Hadoop integration, so forwarding logs from ESM into Hadoop for log management and maybe Hadoop-enabled analytics. So in summary, the McAfee SIEM solution, I mean, as we're seeing, and 2015 breach news, and we see this every day of the week. There's more and more attacks out there, so we need to be ever vigilant. So how do you protect against these stealthy attacks, these low and slow attacks? And that's where the McAfee SIEM solution comes in. So using intelligence with analytics and threat prioritization, the fact that it's actionable with high performance with that proprietary database and ease of operation. And then integrated so that you can go from a high-level security incident and have an automated action, using things like your existing security controls or things like the data exchange layer, for example, with third-party vendors. So that's all I have. I think, Luke, if there's any questions there.
Yep, it's going to change back the screen. So if you do have any questions, please put them in the questions pod, and myself and John will answer those. You just open that now. Just while we wait for some questions to be put in there, John, just a question for you. What sort of verticals are you seeing that SIEM is being most adopted in at the moment?
I mean, there isn't any one, to be perfectly honest. I speak to customers, a variety of customers. I mean, compliance is obviously a big driver so verticals industries that have high compliance needs are always going to be looking at SIEM. But really, it's the kind of solution that we see all customers, all types of customers, and even what we would classify as maybe smaller customers, up to large customers, large multinationals, are looking at. The challenge always with a SIEM solution is that customers and people understand maybe the value it can bring, but it's the idea of that it's going to be just another console. I'm not really going to get the value out of it. So that's typically where we see the challenge. That's where things like content packs and the customizable dashboards can hopefully help, in that initial deployment phase. But from a vector point of view, really, it's or from an industry point of view, there isn't really any one that we see more than others.
Okay.
Anything driven by compliance, obviously, that's going to be a major factor.
Yeah. Okay. We've got one question from John Newson. He's asking, what is the licensing model for this?
So, sorry, what did you say, Luke? What is the what?
He's asking what the licensing model is for SIEM.
Okay, so it's licensed by appliance. So, for example, let's say you want to purchase a receiver and obviously an ESM. So there's different models. They are sized by events per second. So you buy the appliance. So it's not licensed by events per second, for example. So it's a physical or virtual appliance that you're purchasing, and the support on top of that. Does that answer the question?
Yep. And I guess there's a sort of if we wanted to get indicative pricing for customers, there's a sizing sheet that we would need to send out.
Exactly. Yeah. So the first step would be to do a sizing exercise. That can be completed very quickly. It's simply so it's a tool that we use, and you put in your industry type, the size of your organization within that industry, and then you begin to add your data sources, so your perimeter firewalls, your regional office firewalls, your endpoints, whatever you think you may want to add, and that will give us a events per second, basically. So we would allow for maybe things like a burst factor. So, for example, there may be, if you're a multinational organization where you have offices in the UK, offices in the US, there may be a period of time in the day where there's a spike in activity, in the afternoon, for example, when the UK are online and when the US are beginning to come online. There'll be a deviate or a spike, basically, in events per second. So we'd allow for that. Also allow for maybe, so a SIEM solution, it's not something that you look at for 12 months. You typically look at for maybe 3 to 5 years. So look at the kind of growth, expected growth within the organization over that time, and is that going to add to more events being sent to the SIEM? So anyway, once we do all that, we come using the sizing tool with an events per second rating, and then we would size the appliances accordingly.
Okay, great. I think you answered this in one of the slides, but I've got another question. Can I have a hybrid deployment option, i.e. virtual and physical, both together?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you could have, virtual receivers, for example, and a feeding into a physical ESM, and physical and virtual receivers together. Yeah, so you can do that. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, there's no more questions in the questions pod. So as I said, we'll be sending this recording out to everyone that registered and following up with you guys. So if you do want to have a further call and we can get some sizing sheets out to you to get some indicative pricing, then we can do that for you after this. So just like to thank John for his time today, and thank you everyone for attending. Have a good day.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks everyone. Have a good day. Thanks, Luke.